I pressed my back against the hallway wall, my hospital results clutched in trembling fingers. The pregnancy test was positive 8 weeks along. But the sounds coming from inside my apartment made my blood run cold. A woman's breathy laughter. My husband Nathan's familiar groan. And then his voice, thick with desire, calling out a name that shattered me. Rachel? Oh God, Rachel. Rachel. My best friend since college. My maid of honor. The woman I'd cried to about every fear, every hope. My vision tunneled. The tiny cluster of cells growing inside me seemed to pulse with my racing heart. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just stood there frozen, while my entire world crumbled behind that door. What if Emma comes back? Rachel's voice drifted through, tinged with false concern. Nathan laughed, actually laughed. Who cares? She's probably still waiting at that clinic. Besides, even if she does show up, so what? This is my house. I make the rules here. Don't talk about Emma like that, Rachel protested weakly, though her tone held no real conviction. Like what? Nathan's voice dripped with contempt. She's a housewife. That's all she is. Cooks, cleans, hovering around like some desperate puppy. If it weren't for her family money that got my company started, I would have left her years ago. The words hit like physical blows. I slid down the wall, unable to support my own weight. A housewife. That's what 10 years had amounted to. 10 years since I'd abandoned my architectural career. I'd been on track to make partner at one of the city's top firms. 10 years since I'd drained my savings to fund his startup. 10 years of supporting him through every late night, every setback, every triumph, while my own dreams gathered dust. Who was the one sketching designs until 3 in the morning during his company's early days? Who juggled freelance projects to keep us afloat when clients were scarce? Who nursed him through pneumonia after he worked himself into exhaustion closing his first major deal? And when he finally succeeded, when his firm started turning real profit, he'd looked at me over dinner one night and said, Emma, someone needs to manage the home front. You understand, right? I'd understood. I'd stepped back. I'd let my career wither and die while his flourished. Now here I stood, or rather crouched, in a hallway, pregnant and alone, listening to my husband betray me with my best friend. My nails bit into my palms. The sharp pain brought a moment of clarity. I couldn't do this. Not here. Not like this. I carefully pulled the key from the lock and backed away. My legs felt like lead, but I forced them to move. One step. Then another. Down the hall. Into the elevator. Out onto the street. My phone buzzed incessantly. Nathan's name flashed across the screen again and again. I powered it off. The afternoon sun felt too bright, too cheerful for the darkness consuming me. I walked without direction, eventually finding myself along the river, staring at the gray water. In my purse, buried beneath receipts and old tissues, was a bank card I'd almost forgotten about. My emergency fund. Money I'd saved before marriage, plus the prize from my last major design competition. Just over $180,000. When Nathan had needed startup capital, I'd given him everything else without hesitation. But some deep instinct for survival, had made me keep this one account secret. Thank God for that instinct. I found the nearest bank and transferred everything to a new account. Then I checked into a modest hotel and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank walls. 10 years of marriage gone. My 2 closest relationships destroyed. And a baby I hadn't planned for, growing inside me. I placed a hand on my still flat stomach. The test results crinkled in my pocket. Fear, rage, grief, they all crashed over me in waves. My phone, when I finally turned it back on, exploded with messages. Nathan. Emma, where are you? Why aren't you answering? Are you done at the clinic? Call me back. Rachel. Emma, sweetie, are you okay? You're not responding to anyone. I'm worried. Where are you? More of the same. Concern. Fake worry. Nauseating hypocrisy. I didn't respond to any of them. The next morning I walked into Davidson and Associates, the most respected family law firm in the city. The attorney assigned to me, Margaret Chun, was a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with an air of quiet competence. What do you want from this divorce? She asked directly after I'd explained my situation. I didn't mention the pregnancy. I want it done quickly, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I want my premarital assets returned. As for everything else, the company, the properties, the investments, he can keep it all. I won't touch a cent of marital assets. But I have proof of his affair, and I intend to use it. Margaret raised an eyebrow. You're entitled to half of everything, even with his infidelity. Are you certain? Completely certain, I replied. That money is tainted. I want nothing that connects me to him. I just want what was mine before the marriage and a clean break. Margaret nodded slowly. Understood. Gathering solid evidence will take time. Meanwhile, protect yourself. Keep your distance. The following weeks were surreal. I cleaned out my old studio apartment, a one-bedroom space my parents had left me, which Nathan had insisted we rent out for extra income. At night, I returned to our marital home, playing the role of the oblivious wife. Nathan was nervous at first, showering me with unusual attention and tenderness. Rachel kept calling, wanting to talk and spend time together. I played along, acting docile and unsuspecting. They grew careless. Within 2 weeks, Nathan called to say he'd be working late, with important clients from Seattle. I checked his phone while he was showering. I'd memorized his passcode months ago. The hotel reservation was easy to find. That night, dressed in dark clothes with a hat pulled low, I stationed myself near the luxury hotel downtown. Just before midnight, they emerged, Nathan's arm around Rachel's waist, her body pressed against his, both of them laughing without a care in the world. I recorded everything. The exit, the intimate gestures, Nathan opening the car door for her, their kiss before driving away. My hands were steady. My heart was ice. I sent everything to Margaret. I have what we need. Please proceed immediately. The divorce unfolded with brutal efficiency. When Margaret presented Nathan with the evidence, photos, videos, hotel records, the color drained from his face. You tracked me? He exploded, jabbing a finger in my direction. You spied on me? You vindictive. Mr. Harrison, I'd advise you to control yourself, Margaret interrupted coolly. Everything we obtained was legal. Your words right now are being recorded and can be used in proceedings. Nathan lost all pretense of civility then. He raged about my shortcomings, how I'd never given him children he didn't know, how I'd let myself go, how I had no ambition, how I'd failed to help his career advance, how boring and suffocating I was to be around. Emma, look at yourself, he shouted, his face red. What do you even do besides cook? I'm embarrassed to take you anywhere. Rachel is young, vibrant, connected. She actually helps me network. And you? You're just dead weight I've been dragging around for years. His lawyer tried to silence him multiple times, but Nathan was beyond reason. I sat across from him, listening to every insult with an odd sense of detachment. The woman he was describing wasn't me, or rather, she was only the shell I'd become. The real me, the talented architect with fire and vision, had been buried so deep I'd almost forgotten she existed. When he finally ran out of steam, I spoke quietly. Are you finished? He glared at me, breathing hard. Then sign the papers, I continued. I've listed exactly what I want, my premarital apartment and my personal savings. Everything else is yours. We're done, Nathan. Forever. The shock on his face was almost comical. His lawyer looked equally stunned. They clearly expected me to fight for millions. You're only taking this? Nathan asked, disbelief evident. Yes. Sign the papers, Nathan. After today, I never want to see you again as long as I live. He signed. Whether from shock, relief, or humiliation at my rejection of his wealth, I didn't know and didn't care. When I walked out of the courthouse with my divorce decree, Nathan was standing on the steps, watching me with an unreadable expression. Rachel had wisely stayed away. Emma, he called out, his tone shifting to something almost pitying. It's not too late. You could apologize, promise to try harder, and for old time's sake I might. Nathan, I cut him off, using his name with crystalline clarity for the first time in years. You're absolutely pathetic right now. I didn't wait for his response. I simply got into the waiting cab and directed the driver to St. Mary's Women's Hospital. My first prenatal appointment after the divorce was sobering. The doctor frowned at my test results. Your hormone levels are acceptable, but you're showing signs of stress. Have you experienced significant trauma recently? I nodded silently. You need rest and emotional stability. Stress can lead to complications. I'm prescribing supplements, and I want you back next week for monitoring. Looking at the payment total and then at my bank balance, reality hit hard. $180,000 sounded like a lot until you considered raising a child alone in this expensive city. I had to rebuild my career. Fast. I spent the next day cleaning my studio apartment thoroughly, buying bare essentials from thrift stores. Then I opened the old trunk in my closet. Inside were my design portfolios, college projects, early career work, competition entries, sketchbooks filled with ideas I'd never had time to develop. My fingers traced the yellowed pages of my award-winning design, a cultural center that transformed an industrial wasteland. My professor had called it a phoenix rising from concrete and steel. I picked up a pencil. My hand hovered over blank paper. Nothing came. 10 years. 10 years away from my craft. Software had evolved beyond recognition. Design trends had shifted completely. My hands, so accustomed to kitchen knives and cleaning supplies, felt foreign holding drafting tools. Panic seized me. Deeper than when I discovered Nathan's affair. This was the terror of losing myself entirely. A faint flutter in my abdomen brought me back. The baby. I had to keep going. The next day, I went to the largest bookstore downtown and immersed myself in the architecture section. New techniques. Updated software. Current trends. I stood there for hours, forgetting to eat until dizziness reminded me of the doctor's warning about nutrition. The journey back to my profession was harder than anything I'd imagined. Morning sickness intensified. Even the smell of food made me violently ill. The design software felt like learning a foreign language. My portfolio was outdated, my resume gap glaringly obvious. I applied to dozens of freelance positions. Most never responded. The few who did were politely dismissive. Oh, Emma. It's been so long. Full-time homemaking must be nice. But this industry, it's very competitive now. Lots of fresh talent. I'll keep you in mind. Empty promises. I was drowning. Then my phone rang. Professor Martin, my old mentor. Emma, I heard you're looking for work. His familiar voice steadied me. I heard what happened with Nathan. That man was always too slick for my liking. But forget him. I have an opportunity. He explained that his colleague, Ethan Cross, ran Cross & Associates, one of the most prestigious architectural firms in the city. They were working on a complex project and needed additional designers. Professor Martin had shown him my old museum design. He wants you to come in for a trial, Professor Martin said. Emma, I know you're scared, but your foundation is solid. That spark you had, it's still there. Bring it back to life. The next day, dressed in my best interview suit, I arrived at Cross & Associates. The office occupied the top floor of a downtown tower, all clean lines, steel and glass, overlooking the glittering cityscape. I was led into a spacious corner office. Behind the desk sat a man studying documents. He wore a charcoal gray shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal strong forearms. His profile was sharp, almost severe. When he looked up, his eyes were the darkest I'd ever seen. Penetrating, analytical, missing nothing. My breath caught. Miss Emma Hart, he said, his voice low and controlled. I'm Ethan Cross. Professor Martin speaks highly of you. Thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Cross. I managed, keeping my voice steady. His gaze dropped to the portfolio I offered. Long fingers turned pages slowly. The silence stretched. I stood before his desk, palms sweating. When he reached my museum design, he paused. His eyes lingered on the drawings longer than the others. 10 years out of practice, he finally said, not looking up. It wasn't a question. Yes, I admitted. But I've been relearning. I'm ready to prove myself. He closed the portfolio and met my eyes. His gaze was intense, assessing. We don't carry passengers here. We work at a pace most people can't handle. He pressed his intercom. Bring me the preliminary materials for the Riverside Wellness Resort project. A woman appeared with a thick folder of documents and blueprints, setting them before me. This is one of our flagship projects, Ethan said, standing and moving to the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to me. The client is demanding and the timeline is tight. You have 3 days to produce a preliminary conceptual design for the main pavilion. Not a final draft. I want to see how you think. How you approach problems. He turned, his eyes boring into mine. I want to see if any of that fire Professor Martin described still exists after a decade of dormancy. 3 days. A preliminary design for a major project. This was an impossible test, especially for someone who hadn't worked professionally in 10 years. Especially for someone in early pregnancy. But I knew this was my only chance. Fall here and there was no safety net. I took a deep breath and met his challenging gaze without flinching. I'll have the designs ready in 3 days. Your workstation is outside. Jennifer will get you set up. Sign the NDA before you take any materials. Thank you, Mr. Cross. He'd already returned to his work, dismissing me without another glance. Those 3 days were hell. My morning sickness peaked. I could barely keep water down. The computer felt foreign. My ideas came in fits and starts, nothing flowing naturally. The project site was a riverside valley with a polluted quarry that needed transformation. How to make devastation beautiful. How to turn scars into sanctuaries. On the third afternoon, with hours left before my deadline, I was pale, shaking, surviving on crackers and determination. My desk was buried in crumpled sketches. The 3D model on my screen was close, but something crucial was missing. The soul. The spark. I stood to get water, and the room tilted. My vision went black. Careful. A strong arm caught me before I hit the floor. The scent of cedar and something crisp, cologne mixed with coffee, filled my senses. I looked up into Ethan Cross's frowning face. His eyes scanned my pale skin, bloodshot eyes, and finally settled on my hand, which had instinctively moved to my stomach. His gaze sharpened like a blade. I'm fine, I said quickly, pulling away, my heart racing. Just low blood sugar. I've been sitting too long. He said nothing for a long moment, his dark eyes studying me with unsettling intensity. You have 2 hours and 40 minutes left, he finally said, his tone returning to its usual coolness. Has your fire ignited? The pressure snapped back into place. I steadied myself, forcing down the fear that he'd seen too much. Yes, I said, turning to my cluttered workspace and the model taking shape on screen. I just need the final spark. He stepped closer, examining my preliminary design. I'd embedded the main structure into the quarry's rock face, creating a building that seemed to grow from the earth itself. Terrace gardens cascaded down the carved stone. A waterfall, fed by the river, poured into a purification pool at the quarry's base. Continue, he said quietly. His proximity made breathing difficult, but the idea was crystallizing with sudden clarity. Light, I said, pointing to the atrium space in the center. I want to install a massive prismatic shaft here. It will capture sunlight and refract it throughout the interior, projecting moving rainbows across the raw stone walls at different times of day. I spoke faster, gesturing at the screen. Quarries are wounds. Light is healing. We'll use cutting-edge technology to capture nature's most basic gift and reimagine it as art. This becomes a space of transformation, where human destruction meets natural beauty and creates something entirely new. Silence filled the office. Only my rapid breathing broke it. Ethan stared at the screen, at the preliminary light studies I'd rendered. Something shifted in his dark eyes, evaluation, perhaps approval, maybe something deeper. Intriguing, he said finally. 2 words, but from him they felt like the highest praise. Send the final renderings to my email by midnight tonight. He turned and left without another word. I collapsed into my chair, drenched in sweat. My hand found my stomach again. We did it, baby, I whispered. First hurdle cleared. My design created unexpected waves at Cross and Associates. Ethan, overcoming significant internal resistance, presented my concept as a primary direction to the notoriously difficult client. During the waiting period, I became an official employee, though mostly doing grunt work. No one knew about my dramatic 3-day trial. To my colleagues, I was just another middle-aged woman who got in through connections. I didn't complain. I absorbed everything like a sponge, worked harder than anyone, stayed latest, arrived earliest. My body fought me constantly. Fatigue, backaches, dizziness. But I couldn't afford weakness. Occasionally I'd encounter Ethan in the break room late at night when I was still working. His gaze would linger on my herbal tea, my dark circles, the exhaustion I couldn't quite hide. But he never said anything, just disappeared into his office. His standards for my work were punishing. Every drawing I submitted came back marked with corrections. During meetings, his questions were surgical, exposing every weakness in my thinking. But strangely, under that pressure, I felt myself awakening. The architect I'd been. She was emerging from the long sleep, sharper and hungrier than before. 2 weeks later, the project team gathered for a meeting. The lead designer looked grim. The client rejected all preliminary proposals, except one. They want to move forward with a refined version of Emma's light pavilion concept. Every eye turned to me. Shock. Disbelief. Some resentment. "Miss Hart," Ethan said from the head of the table, his gaze calm and direct. "The client has given us an opportunity, but their standards are extremely high. You have 1 week to develop a complete proposal that satisfies everyone. Let me know what resources you need." "Yes, Mr. Cross," I replied clearly. This time I wasn't alone. Ethan assembled a small team to support me. The pressure multiplied, but so did the resources. I became a machine. Research, site visits, models, light calculations, material specifications. Every detail refined to perfection. Ethan checked my progress daily, asking questions that made my head spin. Transmittance coefficients for the prismatic materials. Acoustic impact data for the waterfall. Seismic reinforcement where the structure embedded into rock. Contingencies for insufficient sunlight. Several times during intense discussions, his interrogations really... I was so exhausted I wanted to throw something at his infuriatingly perfect face. But each time he pushed me past my limits, the design broke through to a new level. 1 week later, I stood before 3 senior executives from the client company. I wore my one good maternity dress, loose and black, concealing my growing belly. Ethan sat behind me like a silent mountain. I took a deep breath and began my presentation. "This isn't just a building," I said. "This is a transformation. From wound to wonder." When I finished, the conference room was silent. Then the silver-haired CEO began to clap. "Exceptional," he said, his eyes bright. "The prismatic concept, the way it speaks to the site's history, it has power and poetry. Mr. Cross, this Miss Hart of yours is truly remarkable." My design was approved. I was named co-lead designer. After the meeting, Ethan approached me. "Well done." Just 2 words, but he handed me a cup of warm milk. I accepted it, surprised. "Thank you, Mr. Cross." His eyes dropped briefly to my stomach, where my secret was becoming harder to hide, then back to my face. He said nothing, just turned and walked away. I held the warm cup and watched sunlight stream through the windows. After 10 years of silence, Emma Hart had made a sound in this world again. The wellness resort project opened doors. Ethan began assigning me increasingly complex work. His demands remained relentless, but I was adapting, rediscovering the instincts I'd thought were dead. My belly grew larger. Loose clothing couldn't hide it much longer. I heard whispers, saw curious glances. But Ethan seemed deliberately oblivious, treating me exactly the same. Until one afternoon, when a sharp contraction seized me. I doubled over, gasping, cold sweat instantly soaking my clothes. "Emma!" Jennifer from the next desk noticed first. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I gritted out. My due date was still weeks away. But then came another contraction, stronger, and Jennifer cried out, "Oh my God, you're bleeding." I looked down. Red was spreading across my light-colored skirt. Terror crashed over me. "Call an ambulance." I managed through the pain. The office erupted in chaos. Then a tall figure pushed through the crowd. Ethan. His face was grimmer than I'd ever seen. Without a word, he bent and lifted me into his arms. "Everyone move," he commanded, striding toward the elevator with me cradled against his chest. His heart pounded beneath my ear. His jaw was set, his arms like steel. The ambulance arrived quickly. I was loaded onto a stretcher, Ethan following close behind. "Is her family coming?" a paramedic asked. "She has no family," Ethan said, his voice hard. 32 weeks pregnant. Suspected premature labor with hemorrhaging. In the screaming ambulance through pain and fear, I heard him on the phone. "It's me. Contact the best OB at St. Mary's. I want a private suite prepared. Transfer $50,000 for deposit. Do it now." Before I lost consciousness, one thought circled my mind. How did he know my exact gestational age? When I woke, I was in a comfortable hospital bed, in my arm. Soft lighting. The smell of antiseptic. The sharp pain had become regular but manageable contractions. "You're awake." That low, familiar voice. I turned. Ethan sat in the chair beside my bed. Still in his work clothes, top button undone, shadows under his eyes. "Mr. Cross," I whispered. "Don't talk yet." He poured water, added a straw, held it to my lips. I drank, overwhelmed by the gesture. "The contractions have been stopped for now," he said, setting the glass down. "But you have placenta previa, a serious complication. You need complete bed rest until delivery." My heart dropped. The baby is fine for now," he assured me, seeing my panic. "But you need absolute rest. All work is suspended. Don't worry about the firm. Everything is covered." "But the expenses?" "The firm will cover it initially. Consider it in advance on your project bonuses." His tone left no room for argument. He paused, seeming to debate something. "I've arranged for a nurse to provide 24-hour care. If you need anything, tell her or call me." He placed a card with his number on the bedside table. "I've contacted Professor Martin. He'll visit soon." He stood to leave. "Mr. Cross," I called. "Thank you. But how did you know my gestational week?" He paused at the door, not turning around. "The day you interviewed, you nearly fainted," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "HR provided your medical records. Standard procedure. I simply have a good memory." Then he left. I touched my stomach, feeling the life within, and thought about his words. Medical records. HR procedure. The exact gestational age. And that moment of hesitation before he answered. The man of ice seemed less frozen than he appeared. The hospital stay dragged on. Complete bed rest. I couldn't even stand without assistance. The nurse Diane was professional and kind. Professor Martin visited often, bringing supplements and cursing Nathan's name. Ethan never visited again. But every evening at 5:30, Diane received a phone call. She'd report my condition, blood pressure, temperature, contractions, what I'd eaten, my mental state. I knew who was calling. Finally, I reached full term. At my last checkup, the doctor frowned at the ultrasound. "The placenta is still too low, blocking the cervical opening. Vaginal delivery is too dangerous. We'll schedule a C-section for 3 days from now." The night before surgery, I lay awake, terrified and alone. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Good luck tomorrow." No signature. But I knew. I stared at those 3 words for a long time before typing back. "Thank you." The surgery went smoothly. When that first cry pierced the air, tears streamed down my face. A boy. 6 pounds 3 ounces. Small, red, wrinkled, perfect. They brought him to my face. His tiny warm cheek pressed against mine, and every ounce of pain, every moment of fear and grief, it all transformed into overwhelming joy. I had a son. My son. As they wheeled me from recovery, still groggy, I thought I saw a tall figure at the end of the corridor. Backlit, face obscured, but that silhouette was unmistakable. Was it him? Before I could focus, darkness claimed me again. When I woke in my room, sunlight streamed through the windows. "Where's my baby?" I asked Diane immediately. "In the nursery next door, sleeping soundly after his feeding. Strong lungs on that little one." A knock at the door. Diane opened it, then stepped aside. Ethan entered, carrying an elegant shopping bag with the luxury baby brand logo. He wore a soft gray sweater instead of his usual suit, making him look almost approachable. "Mr. Cross." I struggled to sit up. "Don't move. Stay down." He hurried over, genuine concern in his voice. He set the bag on the bedside table. "Just some things for the baby." Inside were newborn clothes, impossibly soft, and high-end baby toiletries. All top brands. "Thank you. This is too much." "It's nothing," he interrupted, his eyes scanning my face. "How are you feeling?" "Good. Really good." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. "The doctor says he's perfectly healthy." He nodded, then seemed to search for words. "Have you chosen a name?" I hadn't thought about it. But looking at the sunlight pouring in, thinking of rising from ashes, the answer came instantly. Phoenix, I said softly. His name is Phoenix. Born from fire, reaching for light. Phoenix, Ethan repeated, something shifting in his dark eyes. A good name. Silence settled between us, comfortable somehow. Mr. Cross, I said sincerely. I can't thank you enough for everything. Emma, he interrupted, his gaze intense. Don't thank me. You did this yourself. You're strong enough. He paused, seeming to make a decision. Rest well. When you're ready, there's a senior designer position at the firm waiting for you. I stared, certain I'd misheard. Senior designer at Cross & Associates was a position people spent careers working toward. Mr. Cross, You've earned it, he said firmly. The wellness resort was just the beginning. I have high expectations for you. He glanced at his watch. I need to go. Call if you need anything. He gestured to the card on the table. Then he was gone, tall and controlled as always, but somehow warmer. I leaned back, holding the cup of milk he'd brought, looking at the sunlight, thinking of Phoenix sleeping nearby. Tears came, but they were hot and bright. Flowers could bloom from ruins. And Emma Hart's bloom was just beginning. I took 4 months of maternity leave, the busiest, most exhausting, most fulfilling months of my life. Feeding, diapering, soothing. Phoenix was a good baby, but demanding in the way all infants are. Still, when he slept, I opened my laptop. I worked remotely on firm projects, studied industry trends, sketched new ideas. Ethan kept the senior position open and regularly emailed asking for my input on preliminary designs. He even had his assistant deliver a high-end portable workstation so I could run complex software from home. Professor Martin visited often, holding Phoenix with grandfatherly affection. Ethan seems cold, he observed. But that man has a warm heart. He's investing in you like you're precious. I knew it wasn't charity. Ethan saw value potential. This recognition meant more than any sympathy could. On Phoenix's 100th day, I returned to work. The office felt different. My colleagues' gazes held natural respect now. After all, the wellness resort had been a massive success, garnering international design awards and magazine covers. Good morning, Director Hart. Director, how's Phoenix? Director, here are the preliminary surveys for the Cliffside Hotel project. Mr. Cross wants your review. Each director felt surreal. But the title meant responsibility, higher stakes. The first major project Ethan assigned me to lead independently was the challenging Cliffside Hotel, a luxury resort built into coastal rock formations. The pressure was intense, but my steps were confident. I worked efficiently during the day, went home to Phoenix at reasonable hours. Weekends were for the park, the aquarium, simple joys. My son grew daily, babbling and laughing, his smile like sunshine cutting through any darkness. Ethan and I developed a strange rhythm. At work he remained demanding, meticulous, pushing for perfection. We clashed frequently in meetings, arguing over structural elements, facade treatments, spatial flow. But with Phoenix, he showed an almost awkward gentleness. For Phoenix's first birthday, Ethan sent an enormous Lego castle that barely fit in my living room. He clearly hadn't considered my apartment's size. Phoenix squealed with delight. When project deadlines forced late nights, Ethan would have his driver take me home, ensuring the director's safe transport. Phoenix's first fever came in the middle of the night. He cried inconsolably and I panicked. Without thinking, I called Ethan. 30 minutes later, he arrived at my apartment with a pediatric specialist, a doctor who normally required months of advance booking. He stood in my small living room, tall and out of place, watching the doctor examine Phoenix with barely concealed anxiety. Simple rosella, the doctor concluded. Common in infants. Nothing serious. Ethan's shoulders visibly relaxed. After seeing the doctor out, he glanced at me, exhausted, holding my finally sleeping son, and said nothing. But he went to my kitchen, boiled water, poured a cup, and placed it on the coffee table. Thank you, I whispered. He replied, then sat on my old sofa, making no move to leave. In the small room, only Phoenix's breathing broke the silence. It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt oddly peaceful. You've been through a lot, Ethan said suddenly, his voice lower than usual. I looked up. His gaze rested on Phoenix's sleeping face, his expression complex, something like longing, maybe regret. I'm used to it, I said softly, gently patting Phoenix's back. With him, nothing is too hard. He said nothing more. Just picked up his untouched water and took a sip. The light cast shadows beneath his eyelashes. After that night, something shifted between us. Work debates continued, but the edges softened. In the break room, casual conversations. Phoenix doing better? Yes, bouncing off the walls again. Simple exchanges that somehow bridged the distance. Time passed in a blur of work and parenting. The Cliffside Hotel became a coastal landmark, winning multiple international awards. Emma Hart was no longer a housewife. She was a rising star in architectural design. Cross & Associates' undisputed senior director. Phoenix turned 3 starting preschool. A lively, charming little boy with my eyes and a smile that could melt hearts. Life felt stable, fulfilled. Until the Global Architecture Summit came to our city. It was the industry's premier event. Cross & Associates was featured prominently with both the wellness resort and Cliffside Hotel. As lead designer, I was required to attend the awards ceremony and forum. Such occasions demanded appropriate attire. I took Phoenix to a boutique to try on my altered gown. While he played with toys in the children's section, I stood before a mirror checking the fit of a champagne silk dress. Emma? Emma Hart. My body went rigid. In the mirror's reflection, several feet behind me, stood a well-groomed man in an expensive suit. Nathan. 4 years had passed. He looked successful, polished, but his eyes held more calculation, more artificial charm than I remembered. Clinging to his arm was Rachel, impeccably made up in an evening gown. When she saw me, her smile froze, panic and jealousy flashing across her face. Fate had a cruel sense of humor. I turned slowly, my expression neutral. Nathan. Rachel. It's been a while. My God, Emma, is that really you? Nathan's gaze swept over me like a searchlight, scrutinizing, assessing, with a nauseating hint of renewed interest. I was no longer the frumpy housewife from 4 years ago. The custom gown hugged my post-pregnancy figure perfectly. My hair was styled elegantly, makeup subtle but polished. I carried myself with the confidence of someone who'd clawed her way back from nothing. Mr. Harrison, Miss Chun, I said coolly, as if addressing strangers. How have you been? Emma, you? Rachel forced a brittle smile, her eyes fixed on my expensive dress. You look so different. So polished. Thank you, I replied shortly, turning to collect Phoenix. Wait. Nathan stepped forward, blocking my path. His expression had shifted. Calculating, tinged with something possessive and disturbing. I heard you're doing well now. Senior director at Cross & Associates. That's impressive. Ethan Cross is notoriously selective. You must have some special skills. The insinuation dripped from every word. Nothing special, I said icily. Just hard work. Emma, he said, his voice dropping to what he imagined was a tender tone. Look what happened between us. I made mistakes. I've regretted it. All these years I've thought about you. About what we had. Mommy. A clear, bright voice cut through his repulsive performance. Phoenix bounded over in his little suit, wrapping his arms around my legs. He looked up at Nathan and Rachel with open wariness. Mommy, who are these people? Are they bothering you? The expressions on Nathan's and Rachel's faces became a study in shock. Nathan stared at Phoenix, at his face, which resembled mine but with sharper features and brighter eyes. His face went through a rapid transformation. Shock, realization, fury. Nathan's voice cracked. This is... Rachel gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Emma, you when? I bent down and lifted Phoenix into my arms. He wrapped his arms around my neck naturally. Phoenix, these are some old acquaintances of Mommy's. Then I looked at Nathan's ashen face, a cold smile touching my lips. Nathan, this is my son, Phoenix. Phoenix, Nathan repeated, his eyes darting between my face and Phoenix's. Shock morphed into suspicion, then angry bewilderment. When did you how? That's none of your concern, Nathan, I interrupted, my voice sharp as ice. Please move. Emma. Nathan's voice rose, sharp with indignation and something uglier. You played me. When we divorced you were pregnant and you didn't tell me. You. When we divorced, I said, holding Phoenix close, my posture straight, my gaze like a blade. I took only what was mine before marriage. My body, my child, my life. They have absolutely nothing to do with you. Not then. Not now. Not ever. You conniving. Nathan sputtered, his face cycling between red and white. Mommy. Phoenix hugged my neck tighter, his small voice worried. I don't like that man. He's mean. It's okay, sweetheart. We don't have to pay attention to him. I kissed Phoenix's forehead, then, ignoring Nathan's thunderous expression and Rachel's twisted features, I walked past them both. My heels clicked clearly on the marble floor. Each step was steady, purposeful, leaving the ruins of my past behind and walking toward my hard-earned future. The awards ceremony was spectacular. A glittering affair with the industry's elite. The wellness resort project won the summit's highest honor, the Platinum Award. Under the spotlights, I stood on stage beside Ethan. Below us, hundreds of attendees and countless flashing cameras. The host enthusiastically described the project's innovations and impact. Then came the acceptance speech. Ethan gestured for me to speak first. I held the heavy trophy, feeling its cold weight, and looked out at the sea of faces. 4 years of memories flooded through me in rapid succession. The moment of betrayal, the divorce papers, the cramped apartment, morning sickness, bed rest, terror during delivery, Ethan's impossible standards, Phoenix's first smile. The reel stopped on Nathan's face that afternoon, shock, resentment, fury. I walked to the microphone. The lights were bright. I squinted slightly, scanning the front rows of VIP seating. Nathan and Rachel were there. Nathan stared at me with an indescribably complex expression. Rachel's face was a mask of barely concealed bitterness. I looked away and spoke into the microphone, my voice clear and steady, carrying the strength forged through hardship. Thank you to the organizing committee. This award belongs to our entire team, and to the scarred land that taught us about transformation. The wellness resort was designed to tell a story about ruin and rebirth. I paused, my gaze deliberately sweeping past Nathan's rigid face. Once I too was a ruin. My marriage ended in betrayal. My career had been abandoned. I'd lost myself completely. I was like that abandoned quarry, a gaping wound that seemed to swallow all light. The hall grew quiet. But ruin is never the end. I continued, my voice growing stronger, more resonant. As long as there's a spark inside you that refuses to die, as long as you have the courage to rebuild from rubble, to capture even the faintest ray of light. I raised the trophy. The metal reflected brilliant light under the spotlights. Then scars become sources of strength. And from the deepest ruins, the most vibrant life will bloom. Thank you. Thunderous applause erupted, lasting long and genuine. I saw Ethan beside me, a rare, genuine smile softening his usually stern features. He looked at me with something in his dark eyes. Pride, perhaps, and something warmer. I also saw Nathan in the audience, his face completely drained of color. Rachel beside him looked even more miserable. After the ceremony, the reception began. I was networking with international colleagues, champagne in hand, when Nathan appeared again like a persistent shadow. Rachel wasn't with him this time. Emma, he said, holding his own drink, attempting a charming smile that looked grotesque. Congratulations. That speech was powerful. Thank you, I replied distantly. Can we talk privately? Just a few minutes. His voice dropped, taking on a pleading tone. For old time's sake. I looked into his eyes and saw only calculation and renewed greed poorly disguised. The sight was almost laughable. Nathan, there's nothing left to discuss. Emma, please. He reached out to grab my arm. A large hand intercepted his wrist with precision, gripping it firmly enough to make Nathan wince. Ethan. He'd appeared from nowhere, his tall frame radiating controlled power as he positioned himself between Nathan and me. His expression was severe, his eyes like frozen steel. Mr. Harrison, Ethan said, his voice quiet but carrying undeniable authority. Have some respect. Director Hart is the evening's honoree and my firm's senior director. I won't tolerate unpleasant incidents. Nathan paled under Ethan's intimidating presence, awkwardly jerking his hand back. Mr. Cross, you misunderstand. I just wanted to catch up with an old friend. Catch up. Ethan's lips curved into a cold, cutting smile. I don't think that's necessary. Different paths, different destinations. Mr. Harrison, I suggest you focus on your own projects. I hear your development in the Eastern District is experiencing significant complications. Nathan's face went from white to red. That Eastern project was his company's flagship undertaking, and it had indeed run into major problems due to design flaws and construction issues. Ethan was publicly humiliating him. You! Nathan's fingers trembled with rage. But Ethan had already turned away. He placed his hand on my lower back, a gesture so natural, so protective, and guided me away from Nathan. The board chairman wants to discuss the sustainable design elements of the Cliffside Hotel, he said, looking down at me with unexpected gentleness. Shall we? I understood immediately. Yes, let's. And so, under Nathan's furious glare, Ethan escorted me across the ballroom with absolute confidence and unmistakable possessiveness. His hand was warm and steady at my back. The scent of cedar and coffee surrounded me, strangely comforting. I didn't look back, though I felt Nathan's venomous stare following our every move. The reception reached its peak. Elegant guests mingling, glasses clinking, conversation flowing. I excused myself to the restroom, escaping the noise temporarily. Standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing at the city's glittering nightscape, I exhaled softly. These events were more exhausting than any design deadline. Mommy! A clear, joyful voice. I turned in surprise. Ethan's assistant Jennifer was leading Phoenix toward me. My son was adorable in his little formal outfit. The moment Phoenix saw me, he broke free from Jennifer's hand and launched himself into my arms. Phoenix! How did you get here? I lifted him, delighted. Uncle said Mommy was amazing today and won a big trophy. Phoenix wanted to see. He hugged my neck, his voice lisping adorably. Mommy, is that the shiny gold thing? Can I touch it? Of course you can. I carried him to where the trophy sat on a nearby table. Phoenix reached out carefully, touching the cool metal with wonder. Wow! So cool. Mommy is the best. Phoenix will be amazing too someday. I kissed his cheek, my heart swelling. You already are amazing. Director Hart, Jennifer approached, smiling. Mr. Cross was concerned about Phoenix being home with just the sitter, so he asked me to bring him. He thought the little one should see his mommy's shining moment. Mr. Cross is still networking but will come over shortly. Warmth flooded through me. Ethan, always seemingly cold and distant, yet so thoughtful in ways that made my chest ache. Mommy, look. So much yummy food. Phoenix pointed to the buffet table, eyes sparkling. Little glutton. Come on, Mommy will get you something. At the buffet, Phoenix pointed to an elaborate strawberry tart. Mommy, I want that one. Okay, just a small piece. Let me. A low voice from behind. Ethan had materialized beside us. He picked up the serving utensil, selected the smallest tart, placed it on a small plate, then knelt down to Phoenix's level. Several guests who noticed did double takes. The formidable Ethan Cross, kneeling to accommodate a child? Phoenix, just one small piece, Ethan said, his tone softer than I'd ever heard. Too much sugar isn't good for you. He handed the plate to Phoenix, his severe features gentled. Thank you, Uncle. Phoenix accepted it happily, taking a tiny bite with his small spoon. His cheeks puffed out like a chipmunk's. He grinned up at Ethan. Uncle, when you kneel down, you're as tall as me. A genuine smile touched Ethan's face. Rare and brief but real. He reached out naturally and wiped a dab of cream from Phoenix's mouth with his thumb, the gesture tender and practiced. The light caught his downcast lashes, and the fleeting softness in his expression made my vision blur slightly. Then an ugly, sharp voice shattered the moment. Emma! I knew I'd find you here. We both looked up. Nathan had appeared again, his face livid, eyes dark with humiliated rage. His gaze swept between me, Phoenix, and Ethan kneeling intimately before my son. So this is how you did it, Nathan hissed, his voice low but venomous. You found yourself a powerful patron. Ethan Cross himself. It's because of this bastard child, isn't it? The word bastard hit like a physical blow. My blood ran cold then boiling hot. Phoenix, though young, seemed to sense the malice. His smile vanished. He shrank back against me, gripping my dress with small frightened hands. The softness in Ethan's face froze instantly. He stood slowly, his tall frame rising like a glacier suddenly thrust up from the earth, radiating terrifying cold. His eyes turned to ice, dark, bottomless, lethal. His gaze fixed on Nathan with such intensity that Nathan instinctively stepped back. "Nathan," Ethan said, his voice quiet but each word striking like a hammer on ice. "Say that again." The pressure was suffocating. The crowded ballroom seemed to hold its breath. All eyes turned toward us. Nathan paled, but alcohol and jealousy destroyed his judgment. He jutted his chin out defiantly. "Did I say something wrong, Mr. Cross? Don't let this woman fool you. She hid her pregnancy when we divorced. Who knows whose bastard?" Slap. A sharp crack echoed through the suddenly silent ballroom. Not from Ethan. From me. I'd used every ounce of strength I possessed. My palm burned. Nathan's head snapped to the side, a vivid red handprint blooming on his cheek. He clutched his face, staring at me in shock and fury. You hit me. That's for your filthy mouth," I said, my voice shaking with rage but piercingly clear, carrying through the silent venue. "Nathan, listen closely. And I want everyone here to witness this." I pulled Phoenix tightly against me, my gaze blazing as I looked at Nathan, then swept across the stunned guests. "This child, Phoenix Hart, is my biological son, conceived during our legal marriage. I had the prenatal test results before our divorce." Each word was deliberate, forceful. "It was you, Nathan, who betrayed me with my best friend Rachel. I caught you in our bed. It was you who called me a useless housewife who only knew how to cook. It was you who said I was embarrassing and boring. It was you who eagerly signed divorce papers when I asked for nothing but my own premarital assets." My voice rose, years of suppressed pain erupting. "It was you, Nathan, who chose to abandon both your wife and your unborn child. You gave up any right to know about this baby's existence." I pulled out a laminated document from my clutch, my old prenatal report carefully preserved. I held it high under the lights. "Look at this, Nathan. Look at the date. 1 week before our divorce. Look at this bastard you're so eager to condemn." The entire ballroom was silent except for the rapid-fire clicks of camera shutters. Nathan stared at the report, all color draining from his face. His lips trembled soundlessly. Rachel had pushed through the crowd. When she saw the prenatal report, she went white and tried to disappear back into the mass of people. "As for Mr. Cross," I continued, turning to Ethan, who stood like a silent sentinel radiating cold fury beside me. "He is my mentor and benefactor. My most respected colleague and superior. Without him recognizing my talent and pushing me to exceed my limits, the Emma Hart standing here today wouldn't exist." I paused, my gaze returning to Nathan with utter contempt. "Put away your disgusting assumptions, Nathan. Not everyone has a mind as filthy and depraved as yours." I looked down at Phoenix, who clung to me with tear-filled eyes that he stubbornly refused to let fall. The sight broke and mended my heart simultaneously. I walked to stand directly before the shattered Nathan. "When we divorced, I told you I never wanted to see you again as long as I lived. Today, I'll say it one more time." My voice was clear, final, like a judge delivering sentence. "My son's name is Phoenix Hart. He has a mother. He doesn't have a father. You, Nathan Harrison, lost any right to be his father the moment you signed those divorce papers 4 years ago. Stay out of our lives. Forever." I didn't wait for his response. Holding Phoenix close, I turned away. Ethan moved naturally to my side. His arm came around my shoulders, protective, supportive, unmistakable in its meaning, and together, we walked away from Nathan's destroyed expression through a gauntlet of shocked, admiring, and moved faces, through countless flashing cameras. Behind us, I heard Nathan's voice crack in anguish and Rachel's panicked sobs. But none of it mattered anymore. Outside the ballroom, the cool night air washed over us. Phoenix, resting on my shoulder, began to cry softly. "Mommy, that bad man was scary." "Phoenix, that man can't hurt you," I murmured, stroking his back. "Mommy's here. Everything he said was wrong. You're the best, most precious boy in the whole world." Phoenix nodded against my neck, his tears soaking into my dress. Ethan, who'd been silently standing guard, looked down at Phoenix with something complex in his dark eyes. He reached out, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, and gently wiped Phoenix's tears away. Phoenix has his mommy, Ethan said, his voice low and steady. And he has his uncle too. Really? Phoenix sniffled, looking up at him with watery eyes. Really? Ethan confirmed. He lifted his gaze to meet mine. In his dark eyes I saw admiration, understanding, protection, and something deeper, something burning and steady that I'd been too afraid to name. His gaze dropped briefly to the place where my dress had shifted, revealing the faint line of my C-section scar, the mark of Phoenix's arrival, the badge of my survival. Ethan's eyes lingered there for just a moment. Then, with utter naturalness, he adjusted my wrap, his fingers barely brushing my shoulder but leaving a trail of warmth. The night breeze carried the scent of summer flowers. I held Phoenix close while Ethan stood beside us, solid, steady, unmovable. Not far away, the ballroom still glowed with light, filled with celebration and noise. But here in this quiet space a small world existed, just the three of us. Above the ruins, flowers had already bloomed in wild profusion. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed the story, please give it a like and share it with someone you know will enjoy it too. We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what resonated with you most. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of courage and transformation. Until next time, remember, from the deepest ruins the most beautiful life can bloom.